On December 25, 1991, the most powerful enemy the United States ever faced simply stopped existing. No nuclear war, no invasion, no final battle, just a red flag being lowered over the Kremlin for the last time. But here's the question nobody asks. How does a superpower that controlled half the world, possessed 40,000 nuclear weapons, and a defeated Nazi Germany, collapse without a single shot being fired? Capital. The answer is not one event. It is a chain of decisions, each one cracking the foundation until the entire structure gave way. Welcome to Ranking Graphy. To understand why the Soviet Union fell, you must first understand what it was. At its peak, the USSR was the largest country on Earth. It stretched across 11 time zones. From the Baltic Sea to the Pacific Ocean, 15 republics, nearly 300 million people, and an ideology communism that had forced upon half of Europe at gunpoint. For 45 years, the world was frozen in a Cold War, to superpower, to systems. One wrong move away from nuclear annihilation. The Soviet military was terrifying. 5 million soldiers, more tanks than the rest of the world combined. A nuclear arsenal that could destroy the planet several times over. To the west, the Soviet Union looked permanent, indestructible, eternal. But beneath the surface, something was rotting. The economy was a disaster. Factories produced goods nobody wanted. Farmers had no reason to work harder. The state owned everything, so effort meant nothing. People waited in lines for hours just to buy bread. And the war in Afghanistan, 9 years, 15,000 Soviet soldiers dead, and nothing to show for it, was bleeding the country dry. One leader after another took power, and one after another grew sick and died. Brezhnev, Andropov, Chernenko, 3 funerals in 3 years. The Soviet people did not just feel poor, they felt hopeless. And then, in 1985, a man named Mikhail Gorbachev walked into the Kremlin, changed everything. Gorbachev was different. He was young, 54 years old, the youngest Soviet leader in decades. He was energetic. He spoke openly about problems instead of hiding them. And he had 2 words that would reshape history: glasnost and perestroika. Glasnost meant openness. For the first time, Soviet citizens were allowed to speak, to criticize, to say out loud what everyone already knew, that the system was broken. Perestroika meant restructuring. Gorbachev loosened the iron grip of the state. He allowed small private businesses. He told factory managers they could decide what to produce instead of waiting for orders from Moscow. He introduced elections where candidates who were not communists could actually run and win. Now ask yourself, what happens when you give freedom to people who have never had it? At first, they celebrate. They buy Western products. In 1990, 30,000 people lined up in Moscow for the opening of the first McDonald's. They paid nearly a full day's salary for a burger, and they did not care. They were tasting something they had never tasted before. Not just the food, the possibility, but then something darker happened. People did not just enjoy freedom, they compared their lives to the West, and they realized how far behind they were. Gorbachev had opened a door. He thought people would redecorate the room. Instead, they walked out. For decades, the Soviet Union held Eastern Europe through fear. Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, East Germany. These were not willing allies. They were captive nations, kept in line by the threat of Soviet tanks. Gorbachev changed that too. He told Eastern European leaders, "We will not intervene. If your people want reform, let them reform." And the moment he removed that threat, everything fell apart. Poland held free elections. The communists lost, and Hungary opened its border with Austria, and thousands of East Germans poured through the gap. Then came the Berlin Wall. November 9, 1989, a confused government spokesman accidentally announced that travel restrictions were lifted immediately. Within hours, crowds gathered at the wall. Guards, overwhelmed and without orders, stepped aside. The wall came down, by hand, by hammer, by sheer human will. And Gorbachev did nothing. He had promised no more tanks, no more crushing of protests. And he kept that promise even as the empire he inherited dissolved around him. But the real danger was not in Eastern Europe, it was inside the Soviet Union itself. And now, the next part will change how you see power forever. By 1991, the Soviet Union was on life support. The economy was in free fall. Shelves were empty. Inflation was devouring savings. Republics like Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia had already declared independence. Others were preparing to follow. And inside the Kremlin, a group of hardline communists decided that Gorbachev had gone too far. They planned a coup. On August 18, 1991, Gorbachev was at his vacation home on the Black Sea when military officers arrived. They demanded he sign a decree handing over power. They cut his phone lines. They placed him under house arrest. Back in Moscow, tanks rolled through the streets. State television played ballet on a loop, the traditional signal that something terrible was happening. The coup leaders announced that Gorbachev was too sick to rule. They declared a state of emergency, but the plotters made one critical mistake. They did not arrest Boris Yeltsin. Yeltsin was the president of Russia, the largest Soviet republic. He was loud, unpredictable, and fiercely opposed to the coup. While the tanks surrounded the Russian parliament building, Yeltsin walked outside. He climbed onto a tank, and in front of the cameras of the world, he declared the coup illegal. The image went everywhere. A lone leader, standing on a tank, defying an entire military apparatus. Soldiers began defecting. Protesters built barricades. The coup leaders, expecting obedience, found only silence. Within 3 days, the coup collapsed entirely. The plotters were arrested. Gorbachev returned to Moscow, but the power had shifted. Yeltsin was now the hero. Gorbachev was the man who had been rescued by someone else. The Soviet president had become a ghost in his own government. After the coup, everything unraveled in weeks. One by one, the Soviet oblaks declared independence. Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, Kazakhstan. Each departure was another nail in the coffin. The Soviet Union existed on paper, but in reality, it was already dead. On December 8th, the leaders of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus met in secret. They signed a document dissolving the Soviet Union. They did not consult Gorbachev. They did not ask permission. They simply ended it. And so, on Christmas Day 1991, Mikhail Gorbachev sat in front of a television camera and addressed a nation that no longer existed. He announced his resignation as president of the Soviet Union. At 7:32 p.m., the red flag with the hammer and sickle was lowered from the Kremlin for the very last time. In its place rose the white, blue, and red flag of Russia. No shots were fired. No armies clashed. The most powerful empire of the 20th century simply ended. Here is the truth that history books often miss. The Soviet Union did not fall because of one man. Not Gorbachev, not Yeltsin, not Reagan. It fell because a system built on control could not survive the moment people were given a choice. Gorbachev tried to reform communism and discovered that it was unreformable. He pulled out a single brick and the entire wall came down. An empire that had terrified the world for 70 years turned out to be hollow. Its strength was an illusion. When the fear was removed, what remained was not power. It was just a flag waiting to be lowered. If this video changed the way you see history, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Ranking Graphy for more powerful documentaries.